Hello and welcome to another edition of Inside the Burrow, the FAU podcast for and by fans. My name is Dan. Today I'm just joined by Shane. Jack couldn't be with us today, but today we are going to go over the Wagner victory and some of the storylines, some of the things we felt that were pertinent. Certainly the biggest one that jumps out on the screen is, and to anybody that was watching the game, Antoine transfer from USF. We'll talk a little bit about him. Maybe talk a little bit about the O-line, some of the struggles and maybe some changes that we might see. And then also want to talk about the stadium. Shane and I specifically kind of griped a lot about things, and we talked last show about some of the changes that were coming, and we kind of want to go over them. So I guess to get started, the biggest thing, the biggest surprise was certainly Antoine. I couldn't remember if any. I think he tied the record for touchdowns. He had 4 touchdown passes. Kind of came out of nowhere. We were talking about John Mitchell, and we mentioned Willie Wright, but just came out of nowhere. And that was pretty exciting to see. And I think there's a lot of promising things, and I think we can talk about that as well. But yeah, I don't know, Shane, what were your thoughts on Antoine's performance?
Well, it's nice to see somebody kind of take over that slot role that's so important in this offense, kind of running the jets, be the fake, and I think he'll help add to the running game later on. It was just so surprising because he only had 3 catches going into this week. So, this just kind of came out of nowhere. In the fall, they were kind of mixing them in. Playing him on the outside a little bit. So maybe they just finally really just settled on getting him in on the slot, or maybe just him learning the role finally. He didn't get here till middle of the summer. So, maybe the few extra weeks of just being here and kind of learning the system. I really want to see how that evolves. The play he made yesterday, zigzagging all over the field, it was like the Javon Durant play, last year versus FIU.
Yeah.
It's so rare to see a couple of those kind of just freakish athletic plays.
Mm-hmm.
But something, FAU has size in its receiving core right now. Pico and Mitchell, who each put up another solid game yesterday. It's nice to see some speed added to that threat. And then Dan and I were actually talking about, and we'll get into some of the other things later. But all the talk we did with the receiving core. All fall or worry,
right,
might be our strongest position.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of feels that way right now. John Mitchell has looked like a different receiver he has. Pico's had a few nice catches yesterday. He's a nice compliment. And now DeAndre Antoine emerges with, an all-time FAU game. So
yeah. It's reminiscent of kind of, again, 2017 is just such a good reference here, but what we had was successful in 2017. Cam Solomon, always solid. When Caleb Woods came back, he was dominant. And then we had Willie Wright in the slot, kind of running that jet sweep. And that's what Antoine is kind of playing that role, getting the jet sweeps and just finding the open spaces. I mean, there's 2 of his, the long touchdown, or the one where he caught the ball down the field. Really, he ran past his defender and was wide open. And the one where Robinson kind of bought some time and found him open over the middle. And that's we also should, he had a great game. Robinson also, again, had another stellar performance. 25 of 36, 379 yards, 5 touchdown passes. And a big thing, again, that sticks out is no interceptions. I would say there was probably 2, maybe 3 passes at most, probably 2, where it was like, he really, really forced it in there.
Forced one over the middle that should have been picked. But
that was good to see. So
yeah, he forced that one over the middle. I always think, through the course of a season, their defender dropped that one. He was kind of forcing into coverage. I think those things kind of even out because he'll throw a pick later in the year on a tip ball or a ball that goes through receiver's hands. Right. So for every one that should have been picked, you'll have one that probably wasn't your fault. I also want to give a shout out to John Rain, who, who doesn't create like the biggest plays, but just consistent. 19 catches on the year.
Yeah. It's kind
So,
of a
and he's
safety
always
blanket
there
almost.
converting third downs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, starting up the game just like last week, he was recipient of the touchdown, and I can't remember. No, it wasn't him, but Robinson had. I'm thinking of a different play, but there was, kind of going back to Robinson, where certainly he's got a heck of an arm, and we all see that. But he's starting to get a little bit more touch. I don't know if you guys remember that the play where he kind of threw it downfield in between 4 or 5 Wagner defenders. That was really nice to see because it wasn't just kind of a hard throw where he was trying to beat the coverage or anything like that. It was a perfectly placed ball for a big gain, and so I mean, it's nice to see these things start to come together. Certainly, we're going to talk a little bit about the O-line and the lack of running room. Really, I think is you got to be somewhat concerned for FAU not to be able to push around Wagner. It doesn't matter the competition; they're all college athletes, but the lack of any type of running room has been really great. And honestly, Robinson has done a really good job of escaping the pocket and extending plays and keeping his eyes downfield and looking strong. So I don't know, Shane, you kind of feel like there's going to be some changes coming to the offensive line. What do you first of all, what do you think, what do you think of the line right now, and what do you think could happen?
Well, it's hard to tell if it's more just mental stuff, not getting to the right guys. I noticed yesterday that they just were not getting to the second level. We only had, I believe, 27 yards rushing going into the fourth quarter before we put in Tronti, who showed his ability, what we said all fall. He's a good runner, big kid, He's fast, he's athletic. Kind of padded some of those stats, but I feel like against Wagner, you should be able to gash them for 8 yards a carry.
Right.
I mean, and also in a way, you should be able to walk up to the line of scrimmage and be like, hey, we're running the ball in that hole right there. You point out what you're doing, basic, and just run it. James Charles didn't play yesterday, which I found curious. I don't know why. So we were really short on running backs yesterday. It was really only three guys if you count Kelvin Dean. So it's a little tough. I mean, I did expect a little bit more out of Larry McMahon. There's some plays where I thought he should have just broke. There's some tackles I thought he should have broke, but it was difficult. Where I drew frustration yesterday is if you look at that offense, you play the same game that you played yesterday against Marshall, you lose that game 17-3. Right? Like, we out-athleted, and we were able to make the amazing scramble around, cutting around the field, or crisp it, on a fourth down, finding somebody deep. But Marshall, you're going to have to do a bunch of little things correctly over and over. We had 12 penalties for nearly 100 yards. Most of them are on offense. I found us always looking up, and I just felt like we were always in 2nd and 15 or 2nd and 13. We were always behind the chains. And I'm telling you, the next 3-game stretch, and we'll talk about it just a little bit at the end of this podcast, and coming up, UNCC, who is a much, much better UNCC team, all right? Not your parents' UNCC team. We get a bye week, and then it's home, Middle Tennessee, and then home versus Marshall. Next 3 weeks decides our season, whether we're just going to be a bowl team or we have a legit shot at winning the East.
Yeah.
So, the first drive looked great. Everything was in rhythm, but you're not going to just out-athlete Marshall. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to just scramble around and find guys deep because we're just better, bigger, and better than you. You're going to have to just execute and do the little things. And, I mean, if you can't push around Wagner for more than 100 yards rushing through 3 quarters, I don't know how we do it against Marshall.
Yeah, I think, obviously losing B.J. Evans is tough because he could make up for a lot of O-line miscues just because he's very talented, and not that Larry McCammon is not, but he is still just a true freshman. And so yeah, that's certainly something that starting the third quarter was frustrating because we had like 2 or 3 series where it was just bad. It was bad play. I mean, you make a nice play, but then some stupid penalty would bring it back, and yeah, like you said, it's 2nd and 15, 3rd and 15. Again, better teams were not going to be able to just loft the ball down the field and like you said, kind of out athlete them. So there's certainly things to clean up, but these are the type of games kind of bring morale up a little bit. Lane certainly seemed pretty happy about it, and again, we took care of them the way that we should have. Yeah, there was some mental mistakes, but yeah, I'm hoping that we can somehow figure out the O-line. Again, we don't need much, but you got to have some other attack. I mean, we really can't count on Robinson throwing for 350 yards every single conference game, especially when we get on the road, where historically our team has been a different team. So that's just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and just kind of speaking, and Lane spoke to it, and he was called out, and I believe he had either 2 or 3 penalties yesterday, and I hate calling out players individually, but, BJ Etienne, who is, someone we thought would really take a step forward this year, being the second-year full-time starter, redshirt sophomore, that's kind of like, Chris Robinson right now is a full second-year starter. You take that kind of big step, and it just seems like he's not taking that big step. Not saying it's all his fault, but Desmond Noel, the Colorado State transfer, kind of bounced around, played on that last series with Nick Tronti, or the last 2 series. So, Lane did say a couple weeks ago they're trying to get him up and going as quickly as possible. So he's been here about 2-3 weeks now. I don't know if he'll play this week, but you certainly think that after this week, then there's a full bye week. At that point, he would have been here 5 weeks, which is equivalent to a little over a training camp.
Right.
So, if the struggles continue, I would fully expect changes. Definitely want to give a shout out to the defense, though. Outside of, real quick, hats off to Joshua DeAndre, the receiver at Wagner. That kid should be playing Division I ball somewhere. 6'4", showed some speed and great ball skills. But outside of that, they had -6 yards rushing, which is, we will, as we'll get ready for UNCC, we will need every bit of that run defense to stop UNCC's run offense, because we won't, just to slow it down. And really big shot for that last goal line stand by a lot of the backups, a lot of true freshmen on that.
Yeah.
Dwight Toombs, who is, one of our more noted recruits this fall, and one of our bigger wins on signing day. I mean, he looks bigger out there than a lot of the other freshmen. He looks the part, and he had 4 tackles on 2 series. And I believe he was a major part of that goal line stand with a nice tackle in the backfield on one of them. So, that was good to see. Roman Mungeon was out there, along with a couple other true freshmen. So it was really good to see a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball, but not as many offensive guys, younger offensive guys got to play as I hoped.
Yeah. Yeah, and, really the game, depending on how comfortable you want to be, wasn't put away until it was, we were up 28. So, and that was later into the third quarter anyway. So, and even into the fourth quarter, because Tronti only played, 2 series in the fourth quarter?
Yeah, and I don't think it's so much the game wasn't put away. I think it's like Lane wanted to see, let's end on a good note. Let's end with our offense running the ball well, or, I still think Wagner was able to convert a few too many third downs.
And third and longs, too. That was a little frustrating. But again, you got to give props to their receiver, who just kind of always found – and they seem to find the soft spot in our defense over the middle. They really didn't throw to the boundaries very much when they were making those, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11s for first downs. They were kind of over the middle, kind of underneath the defense a little bit. So, and
I think
again,
they kind of just picked on the fact we were playing a lot of guys in the box, a lot of man coverage. We were kind of daring them to throw it.
yeah,
And they use that 6'4" receiver they have. So, I mean, hats off to them for that. But, it's those little things we're going to have to get better on, moving forward. We're going to see a few more guys that are similar to Josh DeCrambe moving forward.
Yeah. Rashad Smith keeping his campaign up for Defensive Player of the Year in Conference USA had a nice interception. Actually, it was really cool to see. And at the end of halftime, so right before they started the third quarter, Aaron, the field announcer, was going, and they were showing highlights, and they actually showed the interception from more of like a lower field angle, and it was like perfect, and you could see how Rashad made a play on the ball, starting off the ball and then really looking back and watching the QB's eyes, and he just basically popped up out of nowhere. The QB totally didn't see him. So another solid game by him. And so certainly defense is something to be excited about, but as we'll talk Charlotte later on this week, so make sure you check back then. But we'll dig more into Conference USA and stuff like that. So, do you have any final thoughts before we have a couple other small topics to cover? But
no, nothing on the game. I think we can kind of move what you and I were talking about earlier with kind of some of the more improved, just what we noticed with the stadium yesterday. We've talked about this a bunch of times.
Yeah. So Shane and I were certainly, I think, maybe not two of the biggest critics, but two certainly large critics of what happened against UCF. And then, FAU made changes right away. They sent out that release on Thursday, I think, or Wednesday or Thursday. And so there was probably, I don't know, at most half the people that were against UCF, but more the infrastructure of the process was improved. Little things like having beer and water and Powerade at so many individual stations around the stadium. Huge improvement, right? You don't have to stand in line for 15 minutes to go get a bottle of water. You can walk up, okay, here's, and they were taking card as well, which was good. And they instead of having the line like in the concourse, like on the opposite side of the Hyundai deck, the lines for the food they would just go straight back, and you'd have to like cut in front of people to continue walking or something like that. So they put up some ropes and stuff like that to kind of snake it around. So certainly improvements there. Water coolers, which is great. Being able to bring your own water bottle in is pretty nice as well. It certainly, it's South Florida, even though it was a night game, it's still hot. So that was always good. Security seemed a little bit better, and then kind of the last thing was the light show that began the fourth quarter, and I took a short video of it and tweeted it, and thank you for everybody that's been retweeting it, because it's been like one of our most popular tweets ever, surprisingly. But really cool atmosphere. I think that was a good example of the infrastructure starting to be there to be able to handle a larger audience.
Yeah, I just say with the security, I did notice that I think with like the metal detector lines, I think there's also just a limitation of how many gates, the actual individual in each corner, how many lanes you can physically open. But right. I did notice when I walked in, behind each one, there was a few obviously FAU employees there. So it was obviously they were there like monitoring the situation. And I'm guessing, I think like we kind of talked about in the future, I don't think it's like a lack of gates. I just think if things start to slow down, to have someone be there to kind of like control the situation and be like, no, let's move them through faster, or let's right. open up another lane, or, we need another person here, or let's move some people over there just to keep things flowing. I did notice more people behind the Hyundai deck bar. And, again, it's a little hard to tell because there's obviously less people at this game, if it, how much of a difference it really makes. But, again, just kudos. I know there was some other people out there just picking apart FAU's effort, especially with the traffic thing. Them closing down, making the Spanish River entrance in there. People were just kind of someone in particular is picking apart FAU's message, and you can't like expect perfection from it.
Right.
It's just that, again, we have leadership that cares and is doing every little thing in their power to and quickly went back to the drawing board to improve our fan experience, and raise money. I think it's cool that we didn't get a chance to talk about this, and I know they brought it late last year, those cabanas down in the end zone. To the normal fan, that might not seem like a big deal. And, even if like a few of them are full, and I looked at the pricing of those things, they're not, it's not cheap, but you got to think about it. That's, they're looking at it as, if we sell a few of those a game at this price, that's X amount of more dollars we're getting in this program than we would before. A little corporate company goes in there and spends a few grand, whatever. So it's just, those little things add up. Everyone wants to see the big $10 million donations roll up, but, people also don't realize them just, again, those little cabanas or little other things they do add up and help build this program.
Yeah, they're building blocks, and we talked a lot about the fan experience and those type of things, especially with the cabanas. And I somebody tweeted that when I mentioned that this would be really cool if we had a full stadium, and somebody said, well, we need better teams, and we need a new conference. And it's like, well, I tweeted back saying if we were in the ACC and we sucked, it wouldn't matter that FSU or Syracuse. I mean, yes, the stadium would be full.
I want to end this. I'm sorry, Dan. I want to end
Go
this.
ahead.
First of all, I saw, and I get the frustration because I walk in from the orange lot, and I see half the students going in, and even more students heading back to the dorms after partying. I do think that there's an element of for me, the school lets you come out here and tailgate, and we actually walked over by the student tailgate, and they're all having a great time. The school doesn't really bother them, or a million underage drinking tickets, or they don't have the issue that IU does. So they let them have their fun, and then they're not kind of participating back. But college football, and especially student attendance, is an issue everywhere. Everywhere. I remember if you on Twitter, you look at the big deal of Bama fans. The University of Alabama making
right. Their tracking
was 1/8 full yesterday, because here's the thing with students, and if you're listening to this podcast, I get it's a little hard to wrap your mind around it. You're listening to an FAU football podcast. You're a hardcore FAU fan.
Mm-hmm.
Most FAU students, the game needs to be an event. It needs to be the cool thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are not going there to see if Larry McCannon improves, B.J. Etnian, takes a step forward, or if we are in the Conference USC title race, or we just go to the Bahamas Bowl this year. Most you got to kind of understand that. So the game has to be an event. You see this all over the country, even with your typical blue blood programs. For many of them, that if it's not a night game and there's a huge opponent in town, and I even read that Wisconsin fans are constantly upset that their students don't show up till halfway through the first quarter and then leave right after they do jump around. And we're talking Wisconsin. So I understand it's frustrating with our students, but students are sometimes getting students to stuff is like trying to herd cats. It's hard to keep their attention.
And, I think one of the things as well, certainly, yes, the opponent, the name of the opponent is going to help, but what's going to help more is consistently winning. So, we talk about building blocks, and so that, whoever was in the cabanas last night got to see an FAU win, an exciting game, a couple of really exciting plays. Hey, that was really fun. I'm going to come back next time, right? And then there's, next time that happens again, and next time that happens again. And then eventually there is the big game, the Saturday night game. Well, again, UCF was certainly an opportunity for that, but there'll be more of them. There's that big game, and then then we start getting them hooked, and people are like, all right, I'm going to invest a little bit more into the program. And then last night I thought attendance was fairly decent for us being 1-2 playing Wagner. Wagner's not a school that's going to travel a lot. I thought it was decent.
Factoring the weather and everything, I thought I mean, I've seen way worse at
Yes.
FAU.
And I think also, if you are somewhat of a newer Owl fan, we are coming from the perspective of literally 5,000 people in the stands.
Yeah.
And most of them are under the Hyundai deck because it's hot, right? Noon games. So seeing what we saw last night was, okay, that's decent. Yes, it's not a sellout. It wasn't even, I think the official number Jack tweeted back to me and said was around 14,000. Maybe we had 9 or 10,000, but again, it was decent for me. And again, it's a starting block. It's a building block. You got to start someplace. And those are the promising things. So, I think that was really good. And so and definitely, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk about the stadium improvements is to just, again, thank FAU Athletics for kind of listening to the fans. And certainly there may have been no denying, what a train wreck the UCF game was. But again, they put a plan into action immediately. And I think started to build the infrastructure of being able to handle larger events. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah. And I don't have anything else. I know we didn't get a chance to really talk about it. I mentioned the 3-game gauntlet, but we'll talk about it. And we'll bring it up. This UNCC game coming up is huge. I mean, this is top 3 biggest games left on our schedule.
Yeah,
I would even say 2, depending on, FAU, the rivalry is always a huge game. Middle Tennessee, maybe, but this game on the road, kind of revenge series game. They're playing well. They probably have the best running back in the NFL. In Benny Lamel, I mean, not in the NFL, excuse me, it's a Sunday. So in
Conference USA. Yeah.
Probably by far the best running back in the conference, like offensive player of the year type running back.
Yeah.
So, we'll talk about him, this week. Hopefully we have a guest to speak about it. But this is a huge game coming up. So.
Yeah. So we'll kind of finish out here with a quick Conference USA scoreboard watch recap here. Louisiana Tech beat FIU. That was on Thursday or Friday night. I can't remember. It was Friday night, 43-31. Louisiana Tech looks to be a pretty solid team. They're 3-1 on the year. Charlotte, this week's opponent, played Clemson and lost 52-10. Don't really know what you can take away from that, but again, they're 2-2. And like Shane said, and we'll talk about this later on, this is not kind of the Charlotte team that we've been accustomed to. South Alabama, similar to Charlotte, they played Alabama, lost 49-7. Old Dominion, I don't know what it is against teams in Virginia, but they were leading heading into the fourth quarter, but Virginia came back and won 28-17. So we'll see. I mean, Old Dominion, I don't think
they're always good for one. They're always good for one. I still think they're a 1 or 2 win team this year.
Yeah, I mean, last year was a great example of that, where they beat Virginia Tech, and that was it basically. UAB handled South Alabama. They look to be, again, another solid contender in the West. Rice struggling. I mean, they're 0-4. They lost 21-13 against Baylor, so they play some decent competition there. But Rice, they played Army, they played Texas. I can't remember, they're one other team, and then Baylor. So they basically played like an old FAU Sunbelt schedule, where it's basically 4 money games and you take your beating and then you hopefully do well in conference. So we'll see what Rice has.
They are much improved, though. I mean, we don't face them this year, but they have one of Stanford's assistants that takes over. His name just escaped my head, and they're kind of running that Stanford style, which is smart because Rice, similar, is a school that has to get kids on academics, that they're very selective with their recruiting.
Right.
They'll be much improved in the years to come, kind of under that system.
Yeah, and then the last two, UTEP, they're improved as well, 37-21 against Nevada, and then the last game, kind of note, is 2 programs that seem to be going North Texas has been pretty steady, but 45-3 against UTSA. UTSA under Frank Wilson really just has not blossomed, really. I think that there was certainly more people were expecting more of UTSA, especially this year. I know they are playing a true freshman quarterback, but to be the way they kind of got handled against North Texas was
I
a
would
bit
say
surprising.
the odds are very good. By the time FAU plays UTSA, it's I think second last week of the year.
Yeah.
Frank Wilson is not the head coach.
Yeah.
Very good. They have an AD there that did not hire him. She's already made a comment like, "Oh, this wasn't my coach" or something. So I think the writing is all on the wall there.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, so that was a little bit of Conference USA, and we'll try to do that every Sunday just to give you guys an idea of what's going on in the conference, because I think a lot of people, the casual FAU fan, sometimes didn't even know that Rice was in our conference or who UTSA is. So we try to grow your knowledge a little bit for the casual fan, and yeah, so. I think that about wraps it up for today. Again, we thank you guys for being with us, for interacting with us on Twitter, and certainly commenting on FAUAllisNest.com. If you're not going there for pregame and postgame talk and recruiting talk, that Shane's been putting up, certainly make sure that you're checking out FAUAllisNest.com. And then, I've noticed, again, I'll make a quick comment here about those that are kind of joining the scene either through iTunes or Spotify, and also YouTube. Subscribe to the FAU Owl's Nest YouTube channel. There's post-game coverage and interviews and stuff like that to get posted straight to the YouTube site as well. So certainly we appreciate you guys checking us out there. Make sure you check us out, FAU Inside the Burrow on Instagram, trying to be a little bit more active there. There's an FAU before the Inside the Burrow on Instagram, and then on Twitter it's just Inside the Burrow. So again, we appreciate you guys being with us, and we will catch you guys later this week talking about Charlotte. Go Owls.